In episode 4 of the Amazing Digital Circus, Gangle finds a new comedy mask that won't break, and when she puts it on, she slowly starts to lose her grip.
We do not anticipate any problems.
The basic premise of episode 4 is Gangle gets to boss around the other characters as shift manager at a fast food restaurant. Episode 4 also gives us new character development by cracking the veil over Gangle's masks and revealing more about what makes her tick. This episode blew the last one out of the water in terms of offering a more complex look into the emotional states of the characters, particularly Gangle, and we learn the true significance of Gangle's masks. More on that later. First, let's go over the basic plot of the episode, then we can unpack the more intriguing storytelling elements and how this all unveils what makes Gangle tick. In episode 4, the story is set up when Gangle's comedy mask breaks as usual, and Zubul shows Gangle a new comedy mask she found, made of hard plastic that won't easily break. Excited, Gangle puts on the mask. The main plot kicks off in earnest when no one wants Kane's next horror-based adventure. Gangle wants a normal adventure. She is keen on a day at a fast food restaurant, so Kane gives her the shift manager role because he likes her leadership in choosing the adventure. In the restaurant itself, Gangle starts off exultant in her role managing Spudsy's restaurant. She apparently was a shift manager in her non-digital life. Jax and Ragatha indicate they prefer Gangle when she's sad. They don't like this happier version, and each time Gangle hears this, she wilts like a soggy French fry. Gangle gets Kane's go-ahead to punish bad employees. She gets back at Jax by sending him to re-evaluation. Meanwhile, Gangle's efforts to run Spudsy's are wearing her thinner than the lettuce in a cheap burger. Pomni spots Gangle letting out a tension-filled scream outside Spudsy's. When Pomni suggests Gangle chat about her issues with Ragatha, Gangle admits that with Ragatha, after a while it gets kinda hard to tell how genuine she's actually being. And then Gangle throws her happy mask back in place and tries to power through the rest of her shift. We get a few mundane moments of a workday winding up. Jax leaves, saying he didn't enjoy the time at all. Zubul talks to Gangle about Ragatha needing a designated driver, and Pomni sees that Gangle looks depressed and offers to close the shop for her. Possibly the weirdest moment in the episode occurs when Gangle takes off her comedy mask, then she smiles with her tragedy mask. But unfortunately, her sudden exhilaration causes her to trip into oncoming traffic. Later, I'll talk about why this scene reveals a lot about Gangle. Anyway, after the accident, Gangle finds herself in Kane's office for a performance review, and Kane gives her a B+, ushers her out, and then glitches for a moment. The story ends with Zubul pointing out to Gangle that the new mask was a bust, but she argues they'll find something good eventually. And Gangle gratefully says, "I don't deserve a friend like you." It's a rather melancholic way of showing gratitude, but it seems shared melancholy brought Gangle and Zubul closer together. This episode lacks a central showdown with a villain, monster, or really any kind of action-adventure tropes. Towards the end, the plot meanders through loosely connected scenes, and yet this is definitely one of my favorite episodes. To get some idea on why the episode works, we can turn to The Emotional Craft of Fiction, in which Donald Maass writes, "When nothing seems to be happening, plenty can be happening. Perhaps it's going on below the surface, but it's there nonetheless." In episode 4, there's the simmering tension beneath Gangle's facade. She starts off the episode on an emotional high, thrilled to be a manager with her new mask, but she can't sustain those positive emotions, and her efforts to retain that enthusiasm start to cause her increasing strain as the episode chugs along. This tension works well even though this episode is neither action-packed nor tightly plotted. As Maass puts it, key to well-written stories where plot takes a back seat. It's a tension that's not public but personal, a need that pulls at your protagonist, an emotional ache that causes us in our own ways to ache as well. One clear thing we learnt in this episode is that both Gangle and Zubul have mostly melancholic personalities, which allows them to connect at the end. But Gangle has moments of joy and exhilaration, and she struggles with her wish that her joy would last longer. Jax and Ragatha didn't help by puncturing her enthusiasm, saying they preferred her when she was sad. Despite the lack of action, there was a lot of emotional tension, and overall it made for a well-paced and intriguing episode. episode. Before we finish up, I want to briefly cover one of the most intriguing moments: Gangle's masks. As I mentioned, possibly this episode's weirdest moment is when Gangle takes off her comedy mask and then smiles with her tragedy mask. At first, it's a small smile, not the manic smile of the comedy mask, but as she gets further and further from Spudsy's, the smile becomes bigger, more exhilarated. It seems this is her real smile rather than a fake one. That's reinforced when, after she smiles, we see her discarded comedy mask with the mouth in a frown. Towards the end, it looks like Gangle's dancing, but then she trips and is hit by a truck. So what does this all mean? On the surface, this is just Gangle throwing away her mask and dancing for a moment. Hardly fast-paced action. It works as part of the episode's ramp up towards the end because this is digging deep into what Mars says plotless scenes must have. A personal need that pulls the protagonist, an emotional ache that causes us as the audience, in our own ways, to ache as well. Gangle has spent the episode trying to cling to the illusion that, through her new mask, she can be joyful and happy just because of this one piece of plastic. We got some foreshadowing at the beginning of the episode when Gangle first put on the mask and saw her usual timid expression staring back at her, but deciding the mask was a good fit, then she started to embody the joy and cheer that she'd first seen on the mask. When Gangle threw away her mask, it was a physical act showing how, in that moment, she released the pressure she'd put on herself. She accepted she had been trying to force an emotion that was no longer there. Paradoxically, when she let go of that attempt to force happiness, she felt better. For a moment, she felt exhilarated. So what is the true significance of Gangle's masks? They're less significant than everyone thought thus far. Gangle has given them meaning by believing that they influence how she feels on the inside, but actually they don't. Next episode, we can expect a more authentic Gangle, one who no longer believes her masks define her. That wraps up my thoughts about episode 4 of the Amazing Digital Circus. If you enjoyed my take on the literally two-faced Gangle and her mask-fueled misery, you can help the channel by liking and subscribing. Thank you to those of you who have subscribed already. Have a great week, embrace the weird, and thank you for watching.